Hi everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. This is my first live stream of 2021, so Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a wonderful break if you celebrate over the holiday season, and I hope you are fully refreshed and looking forward to all that the year may bring. Here's hoping for a better one than 2020. I thought what I'd do, first of all, just to say thank you so much to Ryan Larkin for the super sticker before we went live. Also to Amara Lee for the super chat saying, wishing you and everyone in the chat a very happy new year. Looking forward to all the fabulous content, great stories you'll provide on both channels. Happy New Year, everyone. Particular Happy New Year to my mods, who I can see Andrew K and Chrissy are both there in the chat, do fantastic work here. What I thought I'd do was just start off with a little bit of an update on what's going on, in case you missed it, where we're at with all of the big TV shows and all the rest of it, just at quite a high level, just so everybody knows where we are at in 2021. First of all, House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spin-off, that is slowly moving forward. This seems to have been largely unaffected by COVID, thankfully, because they're not into filming, so this is just a matter of casting and writing and set design and stuff like that. They have given us a 2022 arrival date, which is obviously quite vague, but does seem to imply that they are wanting to start filming some point probably in the first half of this year. We've had 4 casting announcements already. I covered them before Christmas, so I'm not going to go over them again now. We still just had the 4 plus a little bit of concept art for the dragons, so expect a few more casting announcements and the like over the course of the next few weeks and months. Realistically, they probably couldn't start filming before April at the very earliest anyway, I wouldn't have thought. So that's going to be rumbling on. We're not going to see that this year, but we are going to start getting a few little tidbits coming out. Lord of the Rings, the TV show, is filming in New Zealand. Now, they had quite an odd original plan for how they were going to be structuring the filming there. They were going to do 2 episodes, film 2 episodes, then take a long break, then come back and film the rest of the first season. Now, what happened with COVID was that they had to take a break anyway, and that largely, yes, they shifted things around a little bit, a few weeks here, a month or so there, but largely what happened was that they just didn't quite manage to finish off those first 2 episodes before they took their break. So they came back before Christmas, they finished off those first 2 episodes, and now they're moving on. So we got a whole load of casting announcements for that just before Christmas. Those are the people who weren't in the initial 2 episodes, but they are going to be there for the main series implicitly. So that's what's going on with that. Now, they are now filming the rest of it. The original plan was to have it by the end of this year, and fingers crossed, it might still be possible. So we'll see. I imagine certainly if New Zealand thankfully has remained largely, not entirely, but largely COVID-free, which means that they have been managing to carry on with all the filming there. Fingers crossed if that carries on, then we might start seeing trailers or something, maybe late summer, sometime around Comic-Con time, that kind of thing. So excited for that. Other things which are happening, The Witcher is slowly moving forward. Witcher season 2, the last I heard, they were planning on that being for the summer of this year. I think that's being pushed back a little bit. They've been trying to be moving forward whatever bits of filming they can do, but that's quite a slow, laborious process at the moment. They've filmed some episodes of it, but it still needs a little bit more work to go. So at the moment, second half of this year is what we're looking for Witcher season 2. The Wheel of Time, if you're interested in that, they have the season 1 is going to be 8 episodes. They filmed 6 of them and have now paused production, and they're going to start up again, I think, in about April time. So hope must be that they finish that, therefore, relatively swiftly by early summer. And again, maybe we might see that at the end of this year. Here's Dark Materials. If you've been enjoying that, I certainly have. Season 2 was on just before Christmas. They have commissioned season 3. No word yet on timings. And I think that's probably a reasonable roundup. If there's other stuff people want to know about, and if I do know, then I'm more than happy to share with you. But that's roughly where we're at. And that's also roughly what I'm planning on covering in terms of content this year going forward. I'll do a bit more of a fuller update on what my plans are for the channel, because I've got a lot of, I think, quite exciting plans coming up. But in terms of TV shows this year and books this year, it's going to be the world of the Lord of the Rings, the world of A Song of Ice and Fire are going to be all the way through this year. I will definitely cover The Witcher when it comes out. I may cover The Wheel of Time when it comes out, depending on if there's interest on that. His Dark Materials, I've been thinking about covering it both of the last 2 seasons and haven't done. If I find I have time, I may do. But the 2 main things will remain: Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire on this channel for the foreseeable future. Okay, so today what we are doing is, this is an open Q&A on A Song of Ice and Fire. We can cover other issues if you want to, but what this means is that we're going to be dotting around quite a bit. As always, I ask my patrons, thank you. Start of a new year, great opportunity for me to thank you. I genuinely can't do what I do without your support, so thank you very much. One of my ways of helping give back to my patrons is give them priority questions for these live streams. Their questions will be framing this. I'll pick up as much as I can in the chat, but we will be moving around quite a bit, so that's there's only a limited amount of structure that I can provide on these kind of things, but we'll pick up on lots of different issues. We had, just while I was talking, we had a few things in the chat just to pick up on. Jack Hurst, thank you so much, saying, do you think the White Walker motivation will be explored in a lot more depth in the books, even though George R. R. Martin's style is to leave questions rather than answers? Yes, I do think that. I think that we're probably not going to have a full explanation, in the sense that we're not going to get, I think, although it'd be pretty amazing if we did, a POV chapter from the White Walker's perspective or the other's perspective. But we will get, probably through Bran, a lot more of an understanding of what they are about, why they are doing what they are doing. And I think that that is going to be a lot more developed than on the show. It was just that here's some baddies come to attack because, you know, why not? I think that it will be a lot more nuanced. And also, one thing which I keep on coming back to with the others, because George R. R. Martin has mentioned it a couple of times, is that he does not like, when you have an army of bad guys, the idea that they're all exactly the same, because there will be different groupings and feelings and personalities in there. This is not going to be just the great amorphous mass of the army of the dead. There will be some subtlety, some nuances going on in there. And I think that we will, if not sympathize with them, we will at least understand why they are doing what they're doing. I think that's the place that we're going to end up in. Yes, I agree, George R. R. Martin does like to leave things without answers, but he does like to give us motivations. He very rarely leaves completely motivationless things going on. We always understand why things are happening, even if not, or why people are doing things, even if we don't always know exactly all the details about it. Captain Anopheles, if dragons, thank you so much, saying, if dragons represent fire, krakens are water, children are earth, then who is air, men or ravens? Interesting question. I don't think George R. R. Martin personally, and I know that there are people who have different views on this, I don't personally think that George R. R. Martin is framing this like as if the elements are the key things and key difference. I don't think that's how it seems to be set up. Yes, he does, and we've got a question about symbolism coming up later. Yes, he does sort of symbolically use things to sort of dragons representing fire and all the rest of it. But I don't think that is to create a certain number of camps in our understanding of how the world works. So I don't think that's what it is. But I mean, in as far as he does use sort of symbolism, when you say children are earth, I mean, I don't know whether I would say that's necessarily the case. Children of the forest have a lot of tree symbolism, but also quite a lot of water symbolism as well as earth. So there's a lot mixed up in there. In terms of air, yes, flying things is an important thing, and certainly ravens are one of the most obvious flying things within this universe. Eric Harker saying, do you think it's possible that Bran the Builder helped create all those famous structures by using the Weirwood network? Love your content and enjoy listening to it while playing Elder Scrolls. Oh, fantastic. I was playing Skyrim over Christmas, actually, just to get away from the world. If you're a fan of Skyrim, I loved it a lot. It was like a blast from the past. It was great. Anyway, I could have talked about the Elder Scrolls for quite a while, but I'm not going to. But do I think that Bran the Builder could have built all of those things through the Weirwood network? Now, when we're talking about the different things that he built, a number of things are attributed to him in greater or lesser form. There's Winterfell, or at least the Winterfell crypts. There's the Wall. There's the High Tower. There's Storm's End. So there's a few different things that are all attributed to him, and lots of people say, well, could he really have done all of that? And the answer is possibly, but George R. R. Martin is very clear. These are legends. So just because his name is put to them doesn't necessarily mean that he was responsible for all of these things. But he may have the magic that he used, and there is magic associated with these places, all of them in different ways, may well have been the same. So people may well have used the same kinds of magic. Now, my take is that probably the Wall and Winterfell were very much based on the magic of the Children of the Forest, the Weirwood network. I think that's very much involved in what is going on there. Those clearly are. The High Tower is built upon something very ancient. It's got the dark stone, the black stone labyrinth underneath it, and his role was just to build the stone on top of it. That doesn't, although there's a fair chance I think the Children of the Forest were perhaps involved earlier on, by the point at which he gets involved, they've already had, I think, 3-4 attempts to build the High Tower out of wood and all the rest of it. So this is very much a man-made project. And as for Storm's End, well, that does have some magical protections around it, but I think, as we saw with Davos getting in a few times to Storm's End, that there are ways through this, through caves, which is very much a symbolism again of the Children of the Forest, because they live in caves. There are symbolically the Winterfell crypts are caves. There are cave systems going underneath the Wall, and so under Storm's End having a cave system, it does kind of add up. Incidentally, the High Tower also, you could argue that the black labyrinth structure underneath it is sort of a cave system as well. But that does seem to imply something connected with the Children of the Forest, and we have to remember the children were all over Westeros, not just the bits that we think of as being Children of the Foresty nowadays. I think I had another couple of questions in the chat to quickly pick up on. Where are they? They're right down the bottom here. Sorry about this. Question from Goodnight Carolina saying, what mystery do you most want and is least likely to be answered by the end of A Song of Ice and Fire? And your pet theory. Sorry for the fake money. Dollars... fake money. The Monopoly money, let's call it that. In terms of mystery I most want solved, I want to know everything about the turning at Harrenhal. That fascinates me so much. What was going on all the rest of it. George R. R. Martin has said, and this I think it comes under the bracket of stuff that we won't learn all of the history of it, because George R. R. Martin has said that he could write a whole novel about what happened in those few days at the turning at Harrenhal, and a George R. R. Martin novel at that. There's a huge amount of things going on, and so I don't think we're going to learn everything there. So it's the matter of things like the Night of the Laughing Tree, what was going on with Howland, that kind of thing. In terms of what I think might be unanswered, I think the kinds of things that aren't going to be plot critical, but you could read them either way and therefore interpret things in slightly different ways. By which I mean things like Tyrion Targaryen. It's a theory, it's a fascinating theory. I'm doing a read-through, I'm going to start up again soon, actually, a re-read through or re-listen through on a Game of Thrones. I'm doing it on Twitter. If you're interested in that, you can find me there. If you just look for Deep Geek on Twitter, then I tweet through. And this is something that is fascinating me. I'm looking at, again, the amount of, certainly the first two Tyrion chapters, there's a lot of symbolism, dragonish symbolism associated with him. Does that mean that he is secretly a Targaryen? Not necessarily. I don't think that we're going to ever get anything definitive either way. I think it could work well whether he is or isn't. So that's the kind of mystery that I think we're not going to get solved by this, and I think George R. R. Martin's happy for that not to be solved. Question from Ashton D'Angelo. Can I ask a Lord of the Rings question? You can. Curious if you've seen any similarities between Sam versus Shelob and Eärendil and Encalagon. If you want to keep it a Song of Ice and Fire, enjoy $5. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. So this is a... I won't go too deep into this. I'm looking into Eärendil at the moment. For those who are interested, I'm going to do a video on the Silmarils. If you know the Silmarillion is named after the Silmarils, which were these three majestic jewels. What actually are they? Why are they important? That's going to be the focus of one of my videos coming up probably in about a week's time. And incidentally, complete digression, this is the kind of thing that I do on Lord of the Rings, is try to answer those things that you... just a series of questions. I think for a lot of us, we know the story of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but a lot of the backstory, perhaps we don't know all of it. So I'm just trying to unpack a little bit of that. Now, the short bit here, I could give probably quite a lot longer answer, but the short bit here is that the Silmarils captured some of the light of two trees, which there were, which brought light to the world. Magnificent, wondrous trees from the Valar. They captured some of that light. The trees were then destroyed, and so the only bit of that light left was in these Silmarils. And they, through the First Age, there were battles, wars over these beautiful jewels. One of them ended up with this guy called Eärendil, who he had one of these Silmarils. He actually was the person who ended up going over to get the Valarin to come back and destroy Morgoth, the original big baddie in Tolkien's world, and end the First Age. But he had this, and as part of his adventures, he had this jewel, the Silmaril, which cast a great light around. So even when it's dark, it still shone brightly. And one of the things which is noticeable about them is that they are pure and good, and so no mortal or unclean hand could ever touch them without being burned. Sam, if you remember, Sam with in the Lord of the Rings, and they have this file, the file of Galadriel, which is captured light, and it is light from the star that Silmaril that Eärendil had became, because after he'd finished his travels, that star then took its place, or the jewel took its place as one of the stars in the sky, and it was the light from that got captured by Galadriel, which Sam used to be banishing Shelob. For me, this got slightly more complex than I thought I was going to get, but for me, the bigger, although there's obviously that connection in with the one source of light which burns away evil, the bigger link here is the fact that Shelob is probably descendant daughter of Ungoliant, who was this horrendous spider-like creature that killed those trees and destroyed that light to start with. And what Sam, this pure and good character, could do with that light was to push back the representative of Ungoliant. So that's I don't know whether that's the answer that you were after, but that's where I see the big bits of symbolism going on there. Ultraviolence, thank you so much, saying, hi Robert, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Do you think there is something implied for places that weirwoods can't grow, like the Eyrie? Yes, there is, and the implication here, so for those who don't know, the Eyrie, obviously very high mountain, they tried to grow a weirwood there. They took a weirwood seed up, tried to grow it, it wouldn't grow. They took huge amounts of earth all the way up so that it had, good ground to go in. That didn't work. It did not grow there. The clear implication, I think, is the fact that the weirwoods are not just individual trees. The weirwoods have to be connected in with the rest of the weirwood network. This is why we don't get weirwoods outside of Westeros, because they just simply cannot go across to under these huge stretches of water. Yes, they can go under lakes and things, but in terms of huge stretches of water, no, they cannot. Nor can they go all the way through an incredibly high mountain. So that, I think, this is the implication. That, I think, is what George R. R. Martin is trying to tell us, is that it has to be connected in. And if it cannot connect itself in with the network, then it will not grow. KG, I just spotted it. I ran a Dungeons and Dragons adventure on the Tourney of Harrenhal, relying on your analysis. Went great. That means a lot. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, Tourney at Harrenhal would be a fantastic setting for some role playing, I have to say. Okay, I think I'm caught up on that in the chat for the moment. Let's quickly go to some questions from my patrons. Vera Glauben saying, hi Robert, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you too. I hope you had a nice time during the holidays. My question is about Marwyn the Mage. How do you think Daenerys is going to meet him, regarding the fact that he was Mirri Maz mentor, and Mirri has mentioned it? Yes, so Marwyn the Mage, at the very end of Sam's last chapter, he meets Sam and then heads off. And Sam's like, well, where's he going? And the answer is he's going off to meet Daenerys. He wants to now be her maester, effectively. He doesn't hang around. So he is heading off. Now, he is one of these characters that George R. R. Martin has talked about in Meereen, about having to get the iteration right of the order in which they arrive. Now, there are lots of characters who are going to arrive and will have to meet Dany. Some have already done so in certain order, in order for the plotting to map out best. The Meereenese knot, he called it. I think Marwyn is probably going to be the last, or one of the last, to arrive. Now, the question you're asking is whether the fact that he trained Mirri Maz Duur is going to impact on whether or not she welcomes him. And I think the answer is it probably won't. I mean, maybe it will come up, but the fact that one of his pupils then betrayed her in a horrible way does not necessarily mean that she's going to hate him personally. She also got taught stuff by the Dothraki. That doesn't mean that she hates all the Dothraki. There's a lot there that she could dislike based on Mirri Maz Duur, who learned lots of things across a huge range of areas, and Dany has never shown any instinct to dislike things simply because Mirri Maz Duur was associated with them. So I don't think this is going to make a difference. And I think what we are going to see is Marwyn arriving and taking his place in what will then start to appear very clearly to be her court, as it were. She will then have herself a maester. She will start gathering together, if not a high septon, then she's got a mage from Moqorro from the Red Priest, so she's got that element going on there. She will have her king or queen's guard, which she is starting to assemble. She will have a hand of the queen. It'll start looking like she has created her own court, and he is going to be playing an important part in that establishment. Anime Lover Nicole saying Happy New Year. About the wall, who else beside Bowen March and Whittlestick killed Jon? George R. R. Martin keeps this quite vague deliberately, so we only really see this at the very end. There's a bunch of them, and Jon feels people stabbing him. He sees a couple from in front, a couple he knows there are more from behind, but we're deliberately not told exactly who all of these people are. Now, I think that's deliberate because this is not going to be neat. There's going to be a huge amount of confusion, and there's going to be a lot of plausible deniability about who actually did do the killing, because there were lots of stab wounds and there were lots of people hanging around and there were lots of people running about all over the place. You've got a giant who's going crazy over there. You've got lots of... It's dark, there's fires going, there's a lot happening. So I think this is going to be very George R. R. Martin-y in that it's not going to be clear. We know a couple of them, the rest probably will never actually be completely confirmed. I do like this idea that perhaps they might escape off to the Night Fort. This was something that I think Joe Magician and Bookshelf Stud have come up with this theory, which I do like a lot. The idea that they might escape over to there and set up as almost like a rival hub for the Night's Watch, which would kind of work if they think that Jon has sort of led them astray by allowing all of the Night's Watch away from their vows, by allowing all of these wildlings through and all the rest of it. If they wish to go off and be their own pure version of the Night's Watch, then why don't they go back to the original Night's Watch home? So that's something I think we might be looking at. Evan Foster saying, hi Robert and all. Other than being close with Ned Stark and Jon Arryn, was there any specific reason why King Aerys would call for Robert's head along with Ned's? Robert Baratheon. So I think, not specifically is the short answer on this one. It's not that he... Robert Baratheon was very outspoken. He was clearly tied in with the Starks because he was effectively engaged to Ned Stark's sister, so he was linked in with that. So you could, I think you have to get into the mindset of Aerys at this point. He is not thinking rationally. He is thinking in a very paranoid way that everyone is out to get him. And what he will have seen is Robert Baratheon spending a lot of time having fun at the tourney at Harrenhal with Richard Blonmouth, who is very close friends with Rhaegar, who he definitely thinks might be plotting to get him. He sees that he's best friends with Ned Stark, and he's just killed 2 Starks because of their, they were obviously out to get him. Robert Baratheon is just another part of that wider group as far as he's concerned. So that, I think, is the thing. If you're looking for a specific, he did this, therefore King Aerys wanted to kill him, it's not that straightforward. You have to get into the point of view of Aerys and understand quite how paranoid he was at this point. He just wanted to kill anyone who he thought might possibly be up against him. Hypatia Ravenclaw. I'm not going to try and pronounce the rest of that name, I'm afraid. But very few people talk about this. Is Asha pregnant? Interesting question. Possibly, but I would have to go and have a look at all of the evidence there. I have to admit, my last read through, it didn't come up, this idea that she might be in my mind. She definitely is sexually active, but whether that means that she is pregnant, I don't know, is the short answer. I will have to have a little look into that one, but good question. Connor Walsh, thank you very much, saying, hey Robert, going over the books for the second time, finding myself much more intrigued by Sansa. She feels like one of the last connections, initial plot. What do you see for her going forward? Yeah, I'm finding on my reread, I'm only partway into book 1, so I will be intrigued to see her character arc as I listen again. Incidentally, when you listen to it rather than just read it, then you do get different things, different perspectives, things emphasized that you might not otherwise pick up on when you just physically read the book. I am finding her quite a fascinating character because she does start showing, political nous is probably the wrong way of saying it, but she does, from a very early point in the story, start showing an ability to use courtly ways to get out of situations. There's a situation when they're on the road down to King's Landing, and she sees or she falls over in fright, basically, and then she manages to, everybody's almost laughing at her, and she manages to talk her way out of it by just basically flattering people and all the rest of it, and people say well played to her. So there's something there from quite early on. Now, in terms of her arc is broadly going to be, I think, what we saw on the show. The details are going to be different, but broadly where she is heading is to be increasingly, and we see it in the books when she gets the Eyrie over in the Vale, and increasingly this is her playing the game, her making sure that she is in the right situation, and what is going to drive her is getting to the point where she feels safe and she feels that no one has control over her. For all the way through these books, people have had control over her, whether that's Littlefinger, where she is right now, or Cersei, or Joffrey. Even her father decided who she should marry. She didn't object to it, but she was told that this is who she was going to marry, and so all the way through she has been under other people's control, and her personal story arc is to move to the point where she is in control herself of her own circumstances. So that is where we're heading, and that is why becoming the Lady of Winterfell is the logical endpoint for her story. James, thank you so much for the super chat, saying it's been too long since I've been off work while you are live. Glad I could catch it. A little support for your wonderful channel. Thank you. That's very kind of you, and it's great that you can catch this one live. It's been a couple of weeks, and it's good to be back. I have to say, it's good to be back. Ghoul City, thank you so much. How do you feel about King Aegon VI, the King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm? I assume you're talking about Fagon here. I think that I say Fagon. I don't think that he is a Targaryen. I think he is a Blackfire. I think that he probably doesn't know this. I think that is probably one of the ironies, is that I think he probably does think that he is Aegon VI. And one of the other ironies is that probably, although we haven't seen it yet in its fullest, probably he does have the makings of being a good king. Now, compared to Robert Baratheon, Aerys II, and all the rest of it, he does seem to be a lot more stable. He does seem to understand the normal people of the realm. He does seem to be well read. He does seem to have an inquisitive mind. He does seem to have a degree of care about him. And also developing a kind of a leadership style. Now, this all adds up to what is probably going to be the kind of, again, this is the classic way that George R. R. Martin said, he may well turn out to be a good king. The people may well turn out to love him, but it will turn out that actually he wasn't the rightful king after all, and he probably will be killed. So that is just how we are. And then we're left to ask ourselves, did it matter? Did it matter that he wasn't actually the rightful king? Was it actually more important the character of the person? So that's what my general thoughts are. And we're seeing, and I think it's deliberate that we don't see this through the eyes of people like Varys, because then we would actually understand what is really going on. And we're just, at the moment, we're just left with this statement that he is who he is. Kelly Johnson, thank you, saying, will Jon and Dany have a passionate, volatile, jealous, and sometimes violent romance? Quite possibly. The thing that I am most keen on is that it doesn't seem rushed. Now, it obviously did on the TV show. In the books, George R. R. Martin won't want to rush it, but with the best will in the world, they're not going to start a relationship in the Winds of Winter, I don't think, which means it has to be beginning and ending within one book, Dream of Spring. So what does that mean? It means that we're going to have quite a lot of character build up to it. Now, they do... the build up has happened already, in that George R. R. Martin has already established the kind of woman that Jon seems to go for, and the kind of man that Dany seems to go for, and that does seem to match up. But for neither of them in those previous times were those relationships necessarily plain sailing. So Jon's relationship with Ygritte, yes, he did seem to love her, but that was not an easy relationship for him. Similarly, Dany's with Dario is not an easy relationship for her. So there are precedents that when they do meet, then it's not going to be easy. This isn't going to be this kind of whirlwind, beautiful romance where everything suddenly fades away and they're just going to be gazing into each other's eyes. I think that, but given the world that they are going to be meeting up in, dragons and others and apocalyptic things happening, it's also not going to make for an easy romance. So passionate, volatile, jealous, and sometimes violent, that seems entirely possible. I certainly think that it will end with violence quite tragically. Question from Prince of Quarkness. What would be the key steps to lead to Bran on the Iron Throne? The key steps to lead to Bran on the Iron Throne are that he is standing at the end of it. Not literally standing, but once you get this situation, which we probably will at the end of Dream of Spring, that the Targaryens, they're gone. They're no longer the default rulers of the Seven Kingdoms. Who else could be ruler? Now, they did on the show, they had this kind of small great council of, however many there were, 15 people, I think they had, sort of sitting around in a semicircle. And that, I think, gives us a hint to where this might be, because frankly, we're going to end up this situation of, well, who shall we turn to? Who is there left? And at this point, all of the great councils, when we could pretend that they are these wonderfully democratic institutions, they're not. They're instruments of power. It's a matter of who has power at the end of all of this, and who will have power at the end of all of this. The Starks. Frankly, they are going to be the people, because the Vale is not going to have a strong and stable leadership after all of this. Even if Robin Arryn survives, which he may or may not, Littlefinger's not going to be there. They're not going to be having a strong and stable leadership there. The Riverlands similarly won't, and both of those two will have connections in with the Starks. I think there's a fair chance that the Tyrells will be largely wiped out. The Lannisters are going to be gutted. The idea that who's going to be left, probably just Tyrion, and I don't think Tyrion will want to be king himself. What about the Dornish? I don't think people would accept them coming to power. So you start casting your eyes about who is there, who has got the power. The power will probably reside in the hands of House Stark. We've already had this kind of feel, George R. R. Martin, when we look at Fire and Blood, he didn't say as much, but he was clearly dropping some sort of foreshadowy hints. And the Hour of the Wolf, when we get the Starks who come in at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, and the Starks suddenly astonishing everyone are there, holding all the power. That, I think, is going to be something like what we're going to see in A Dream of Spring. And then you say, well, who is it the Starks will want to be the ruler? Now, Sansa, I think, will probably not want to. She's had very bad experiences in King's Landing. I think she will want to be ruling in the north. Jon will clearly, by that point, be outed as a Targaryen and won't want anything to do with it. Who else is there going to be left? Well, Bran, technically, should be next in line after Rob's dead, after Jon has pulled himself out. Bran is actually technically next in line. He is the most powerful figure there, and if that is we get to that point, then I could see Bran becoming the king. Now, add to that the fact that he has got the Weirwood network to sort of move things around the outside of it. That, I think, opens up quite a clear route to him. Kelly Johnson, will Dany and Arya have dialogue unlike the show? Not entirely sure what that will Dany and Arya meet, if that's the question. I'm not sure that they will. They may, but I think there's a fair chance that they don't. Dany, in fighting the others, it's probably more her fighting them. She has a dream of effectively of fighting them with the trident, which is entirely possible. That's where the others come to. So no, there's a fair chance, I think, that they won't. Will Foran saying hi. I remember you saying prologues introduce concepts, and I love that observation. What concept do you think will be in Wynn's prologue, and how? Thanks. Interesting. Yeah, so when I say prologues introduce concepts, the best example of this is I think Varamir Sixskins introduced the concept of what happens to skin changes when they die, and the answer is they can magically, if their own body dies, they can magically go and inhabit the body of their wolf, say, which is an important concept because obviously at the end of the book, Jon dies and seems to go through the same experiences that Varamir does, and so our mind should be thinking, his spirit is going to be going over to his direwolf. Now, what concepts are going to be introduced? I think that the hints are George R. Martin has told Jane Westerling is going to appear. I think the most likely thing is that she's going to be on her way to be transported across to the Lannisters, are taking her away from the Riverlands, and I think that her caravan or whatever it is will get attacked, and I think that she will be liberated, and I think that this will show a few concepts depending on who does it, and there's a fair chance that this might be either the Brotherhood through Lady Stoneheart or possibly Nymeria's wolf pack. I think this shows what is going to be happening at one level, certainly, and it really depends. We don't know whose POV, and that may well be the thing that drives the concept, but it's certainly, I think, will be introducing the idea that the Riverlands, which have, through the last few books, they have been incredibly complicated, lots of different groups claiming control all over the place, but the Lannisters starting to try and exact control. This is the start of the end of the Lannisters being in control. So I think that is what is the concept is going to be there. This is the Starks who are going to now start to be moving or reclaiming their pride, I think, as much as anything else. So I think that is certainly one of the concepts, but who he does it through, whose POV it is, he could do it through Arya / Nymeria's perspective. That would be quite fascinating. He could do it through anyone's, but he normally the character whose POV it is dies, so probably not Arya. Sydney Rose, thank you so much, saying 7 blessings, and to you. For you and the chat, what is an element of George's world building that you really enjoy? Ecology, language, family trees, nature of magic, anthropology, etc. Yeah, but great question for the chat as well. If people want to put things, I'll try in the chat. I'll see whether I can pull out a few of them as we go. What I enjoy in terms of his world building is the characters. This is, for me, very much what he does. You get the languages, obviously Tolkien being a philologist, he was huge on the languages. George R. Martin doesn't pretend to go down that route at all. What I like, as I say, it's about the characterizations, and it's also his willingness to have legends that are legendary, that don't necessarily have to be true. You get a lot, and this is something that a lot of fantasy defaults into sometimes, high fantasy, is that things that happened thousands of years ago, we know exactly how they happened. That's definitely true. People go off on quests and find out it was exactly as we thought. George R. Martin is happy with the vagueness. He's happy with a little bit of uncertainty there. He's happy with us being unsure about certain things. And I think that, for me, that adds in a layer of realism to his world building that perhaps in some other places we don't see so much. Kofi Manqua, why didn't Cregan Stark seek independence for the North? The South was severely weakened from the war and didn't have many dragons left. Well, it's an interesting question. This is going back to what I was talking about at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, when the Starks suddenly unexpectedly found themselves in a position of power in King's Landing. Now, I think the short answer is that he met and fell in love with Blackwood. Forgotten her name now, which Blackwood it was, but she is obviously from south of the Neck, so she was, although yes, she worshipped the old gods, she was a part of the Seven Kingdoms, and I think that will have probably played into his desire and understanding to be keeping the Seven Kingdoms together. And frankly, he also had positive interactions with the Targaryens, so it's not that he suddenly came down with this independence thought in his mind. He came down actually as effectively as a summons from his, what he deemed to be his rightful monarch, and so for him to suddenly change tack and say, actually, you know what, we're going to be independent, was probably not. It would have been a bit out of character. Added to which, although we can, in hindsight, look back and say the dragons were dying out after that, at the time they didn't think that. Nobody really thought that. Yes, lots of dragons have died, but nobody seems to be discussing the idea that maybe that was it. Then maybe there weren't going to be lots of new dragons being born, because they had been being hatched at one a year or something like that quite quickly. So there's no real concept there, I think, that the dragons were gone. And obviously the thing which kept everybody in line in the Seven Kingdoms at that point was the threat of dragons. So I think that there are lots of reasons why he probably didn't, but frankly, it probably wasn't actually on his agenda at the time. JT Soul, thank you so much. I didn't see a question attached to that super chat, but thank you. 8kins8, just a bit of fun. If you had to marry into a house, which one would you marry into? If I had to marry into a house, probably the Tyrells, simply because Highgarden to me seems easily the nicest place in the entire Seven Kingdoms. It's certainly the lushest, the richest. When you read accounts of it, there's pleasure barges going down the river, minstrels on little islands, and it just sounds, flowers, fields of flowers going on for miles. This feasts all the time, music in the air, sweet smells of it sounds delightful. So out of all the places, then I think probably that's where I'd most like to live. And the Tyrells seem to be not evil, so I think probably them. Question. I think I had one more question to pick up on. Sasak, yes, Robert wants that luxurious life. I think if you're in the Seven Kingdoms, you want just what is your best chance of not dying, I think is really where we're at. I hope I've not missed any, but I'm just going to pick up from where I'm at. Sergeant Sodom saying, people think Bloodraven is the big bad. However, he seems to have been in the background setting up for years. The lesser evil for the greater good. That is definitely how he sees it. He is all about the greater good. That is what Bloodraven is. He thinks he knows best, and he thinks that he can manipulate people in order to get the best outcome. So I don't think he's big bad. In fact, I don't think that George R. R. Martin writes big baddies. I don't think that's his style. I think that he's very much a matter of trying to make sure that you get layered characters who believe that they are doing right, even if we might look at them and go, nah, I'm not sure they are actually doing right. Bloodraven is the classic example. He is doing what he thinks is for the best, and he doesn't really care about the collateral damage along the way. Joe, why do we assume that the man as tall as Hodor and the girl are Dunk and Aldernan? I think they are Jacaerys and Cregan's daughter. So this is in Bran's vision. Bran has visions from the Weirwood tree in Winterfell, and he looks out through it, and he sees a series of these visions going back in time. Now, the one that you're talking about is a very tall knight, as tall as Hodor is the description, and then a woman on her tiptoes kissing him. So that is it. Now, why do people assume this is Duncan Aldernan? Partly because of the timing. The Bran's visions, they go back through time, and so we can, by seeing what the one was before and the one was after, then we can work out the rough timescale of what that is. Partly because George R. R. Martin was very much hinting that we would see at least one of Dunk's descendants, and he would be hinting at it. Now, Brienne obviously got a hint as well, but here is another hint that whoever this is a relative or ancestor of Hodor. That seems to be the hint that we've got going on here. The fact that this is noticeably very tall makes us think of Sir Duncan the Tall, so the language is there as well. Could it be Jacaerys and Cregan's daughter? This is Jacaerys, who flew up to this at the very beginning of the Dance of the Dragons, who flew up to Winterfell and allegedly had an affair, or even married, allegedly, Sarah Snow, a bastard child of the Starks. Could it be them? I don't think Jacaerys is described as being very tall. He may be described as tall, but I don't think he's described as very tall. Now, could it be them? I mean, it depends on your interpretation of the other visions that we get for Bran. So maybe it's not outside the realms of possibility, but the hints that we get all seem to suggest Dunk. Added to which, I think George R. R. Martin likes Dunk and Egg stories, and I don't think that he would be able to resist these kind of little suggestions and hints. Ghoul City, thank you for the question, saying, what forgotten character do you think will be a big player in the end? Tyrek, Ned Dane, Carl the Maid, etc. I don't know about a forgotten character. I mean, so there are some characters who I think were going to be important. So Ned Dane is a interesting one, because he almost certainly was going to be important, but when George R. R. Martin changed his mind and decided not to have that 5-year gap between books of in-world time, that meant that he changed his plans, and so the story he had lined up for Ned Dane, he's now created for Darkstar. So I think that character is going to have a role with Dawn the Sword going over to King's Landing and so on. I've talked about that a few times. So I think that Ned, who he was going to be, is definitely going to have a role of some kind. In terms of forgotten characters, I mean, I don't know. I have a feeling that there will probably be some in the Vale that will turn to be slightly more important than we think they are. Then Sansa's not just going to leave the Vale and suddenly all of the Vale's going to vanish. There's going to be a lot going on there. I'm trying to think of a sort of a a character that you might consider to be forgotten that will be important. I don't know. I might have to pass on that one. I think that Tyrek, no, I don't think so. Ned Dane would have been important, but George R. R. Martin has sort of taken his role and given it somewhere else. Cull the Maid, probably not hugely going forward, but I think that some of the characters that we think are not as big. So someone like Justin Massey, I think, is going to have quite an important role going forward, even though he's not a hugely important character. Gus Mulder, could Melisandre be a child of the forest? The child in the cave says she has walked among men to learn the language for 200 years, presumably with a glamour, because they are thought to be extinct. Could Melisandre be a child of the forest? I don't think so, because she's all about the fire, and she doesn't know her reaction when she sees in the fire, in the flames, what is Bloodraven, and Bran is immediately thinking that they are the great other, which, if she were a child of the forest, that wouldn't be her first reaction. No, I think Melisandre definitely has got other things going on there. I think that there's a chance that she's a fire white. That's my own take. I did a video on this ages ago. If you're interested in hunting that one down, that's my take. I think that she is very, very old, and I think there's a chance that she is a fire white. I don't think that she's a child of the forest simply because her whole worldview seems to be based on this Manichaean approach of like the great god R'hllor and the great other in eternal conflict, and she seems to conflate sometimes things like the children of the forest with the great other. So given the fact we've now had a POV from her, I think that's pretty established now, and I don't think that there's a chance that she's a completely different race with a completely different belief system than that we think that she has. Question from Robin Blackwood. Do you think Howland Reed in The Winds of Winter, or maybe even Ashara? Ashara is my favourite character, and your theory about her being in the neck gave me hope. Do you think we'll see them? I think we will see Howland in A Dream of Spring. There's an outside possibility that he may appear towards the end of The Winds of Winter, but I think he's really going to start appearing in A Dream of Spring. George R. R. Martin has told us this. He said he's not revealed Howland before because he knows too much, basically, but he will make an appearance. So we will see him. Ashara Dane, I think she is there. I think she's in the neck. Whether that means that she's going to make an appearance is another matter. Quite possibly. I think that there's no reason why she shouldn't come out of hiding once everything's out in the open. And she did seem to be quite a proactive figure in her younger days. So my guess is, yes, there's a good chance we might see her. Not in The Winds of Winter, though, in A Dream of Spring. Have I got any more questions? I think one more. Sean Hurley didn't actually see a question with that. Sean, if you have a question, then one of my moderators hopefully will be able to pick it up and bring it to my attention. Can't see that, so I will go back to my questions from my patrons. Greasy Strangler. Hi, Robert. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. George R. R. Martin said in an interview that he was debating on whether or not to include a certain twist in The Winds of Winter, and later went on to confirm he decided to do it. Any idea what this is? Now, this is one of those things that I'm very... I'm intrigued by it, because when he gives these hints, then I just wonder, what did he actually say? So I hunted down what he actually said here, and I'll happily read this out. This is with Entertainment Weekly, and he says, "This is going to drive your readers crazy, but I love it. I'm still weighing whether to go in that direction or not. It's a great twist. It's easy to do things that are shocking or unexpected, but they have to grow out of characters. They have to grow out of situations. Otherwise, it's just being shocking for being shocking. But this is something that seems very organic and natural, and I could see how it would happen. And with the various 3 or 4 characters involved, it all makes sense. But it's nothing I've ever thought about before. And it's nothing they can do in the show, because the show has already, on this particular character, made a couple of decisions that will preclude it, where in my case, I have not made those decisions." And then a year later, he says, "I have decided to do it. Yes, it's something that involves a couple of characters, one of whom is dead in the show, but not dead in the books. So the show can't do this, unfortunately." So this was from 2015, 2016. And he's talking about a twist that he'd not really thought of before, and a twist that involves at least a couple of characters, maybe more, and one of which was dead in the show. Now, this was 2015, 2016. This is, I don't know, somewhere around season 5, 6, something like that. So if we're trying to find hints of what it is exactly that this twist is, the best place to start is who this might be with. And there are obviously a whole host of characters. The biggest possibilities are someone like Stannis, or maybe Sir Barristan, or Mance Rayder. Now, if I had to guess, probably not Stannis, because I think that we already know one twist with Stannis. I think with Shireen, and so unless he's talking about that, I would need to go back and check whether the timing is right for that to be the twist that he's talking about. But I suspect probably not. My best guess is that it's either Sir Barristan, who he was very clear is very much alive. He said that in his books, or Mance Rayder, who was killed on the show but not in the books. So what could Barristan's twist be? Maybe his twist is, and I've heard a few people suggest this, and it's possible that he discovers about Fagon. He's about to meet Tyrion probably relatively soon in the Winds of Winter, and he decides actually he is going to switch his allegiance from Dany to Fagon. That is a possible twist. It would sort of make sense, because he might feel that he wants to make sure that there's the best person there. If he believes this actually is Fagon, then his code of honor might say that, that is actually the rightful king rather than Dany. So that's possible. The other thing is Mance Rayder doing something. I think that he will definitely he has things he has left to do. I think he's going to go down into the crypts. I think that he's going to possibly discover some secrets while he's down there in the crypts of Winterfell. And I think that he will, therefore, that the potential is for him to be causing some trouble, not just to who is already there, being the Boltons, but maybe he wants to come back out and try and save the Dallas child. So it's entirely possible that he definitely has got motivations that are still there. Maybe he's going to find another bit of the Horn of Winter or something like that. So if I had to guess, it would be something to do with Mance Rayder. Donald Peoples, given her appearance and Melanie Lot 7, could Mel be a wildling with latent green seer abilities, making her so adept at seeing visions and flames? It's possible. But it doesn't seem to be green seer abilities. That there definitely is magic that you can use to see into the flames. Is something that's, it's not just her. So I don't think that there's a need to add this extra thing in there. I think Melanie Lot 7, she that seems to be, for those who don't know, this is what her remembering, it would appear her childhood being a slave, being sold off, presumably to the temple. Does she have some latent green seer abilities? It might be, but I don't see a need for this to be the case. And George R. Martin would have to give us a little bit of extra explanation. And I think her character is good enough without that being there. JT Souls. Oh, so I'm just Chrissy of Oldstone saying I missed JT Souls' question. Apologies. If you add it back in as a comment, then I will try and get to it now. I say you've just put it here. What's your interpretation of the rotten blue heart in the House of the Undying? JT Soul, apologies for missing it before. What is my interpretation of that? I think it's deliberately vague, but this is supposed to be, I think, what is keeping them alive. Effectively, this is their soul and their life and all the rest of it, because they are undying. However, something is keeping them going. This is a type of magic which is different to the rest, but very much a kind of an inverse in a way of what's going on with the Weirwood trees. So if we're trying to think of what symbolism we've got there, we've got a heart tree, and we've got which is obviously the sort of red symbolism, and then we've got a blue heart in the House of the Undying. So that's what the sort of the symbolism is. If you think of the Shade of the Evening tree as being a sort of a twisted version of the Weirwood network, then that's normally a good place to start with it. So if you just think of this as being sort of a twisted concept of what is it that keeps them alive, if you get the Weirwood network hooked up to the tree, hooked up to the heart tree, and here people are being kept alive, the Undying are being kept alive, or not dead at least, by effectively being hooked up to this blue heart. That's my way of understanding what was going on there anyway. Question from, hopefully that's me picked up on any that I missed now. Kelly Johnson, a contradiction that Martin says ancient history is vague but has family lines that certainly go back 10 millennia. Yes, so I don't know that it counts as a contradiction so much. The family lines that go back 10 millennia tend to be like the Starks and all the rest of it, who actively preserved their history in stone with statues and the like. So some families do that. I don't think there's a contradiction between that idea that, you know, they try and preserve the names of people and the idea of the deeds of them might be legendary and vague. So just in my own country's mythology, then the idea that we have got King John and King Richard the Lionheart, and we have ideas of what was going on with them, but these are all tied up with legends around Robin Hood and all the rest of it. And what's the truth of that? Who knows? There definitely is some truth in there, because all of these things, there's obviously a kernel of truth in things like myths and legends, but we do have historical characters that we know. It's a matter of what happened with them. That's some we know about because it's been preserved, some we do not know about. And this is something George R. R. Martin incidentally plays with a lot. What is true history? Is it what is written down? Is it what is experienced as through the Weirwood network? AK Channel TV, thank you so much, saying Ned gets credit for being honourable, but he wanted to have Jon swear not to have kids before he told him who he really was, which isn't fair to Jon. Yes. And I think that Ned gets credit for being honourable, but in reality, his greatest, the thing he should get the greatest credit for is his love for his family. He's not happy about the situation. He did not want to send Jon to the wall. It was Cat who made him send Jon to the wall, and then when the idea was put to him, he thought for a bit. He gazed out the window, and then finally he came to a conclusion that as Jon had asked for it, this wasn't Ned's original idea. Cat said he should go. Jon had previously asked to go. He agreed to it. So there's, a subtle difference there, but he did allow him to go off. You're right, and swear not to have kids, but it was Jon's decision not to have kids. Robin Blackwood, I personally don't believe that the pink letter was sent by Ramsay and was faked by someone else. Do you agree? And if so, who do you think sent it? Yeah, I did a video on this a while ago, called something like Who Sent the Pink Letter. It's very clear when you read it. The written style is not Ramsay's at all, and it is focused in more than anything else about Mance Rayder. That's the real focus of it, which is an odd thing for something to be focused in on, given the fact that Mance Rayder is allegedly dead. So the hints that we've got, and there's a whole lot more. The language usage is the usage that the wildlings have. The written style seems to be not his. So it just seems, if I had to guess, the person who physically wrote it was probably Mance Rayder himself. And I think that this is on prompting probably from Melisandre. Now, why? What's going on? What's the point of this? You have to get underneath it all and ask, why might somebody want to send that letter? The reason why somebody wants to send that letter is to spur Jon into going to Winterfell, to take as many of his wildlings or whatever with him and to go to Winterfell. Who wants Jon to go to Winterfell? Melisandre does. She knows that Stannis is there about to attack Winterfell, probably not in a very good situation. She knows that Stannis definitely wanted Jon to give up being Lord Commander and wanted to make him king, make him Lord of Winterfell. So all of these things tie up, and it's exactly the kind of thing that Melisandre would do. It's far too underhand, I think, for Stannis to have done personally, but this does seem to be what's going on there. And I think I had one more question. Isaac Husson saying, given the importance of personal identity in A Song of Ice and Fire and the effects resurrection has on one's sense of self, will we get any more chapters titled Jon, or will they be titles like Mercy and Elaine? Yeah, personal identity is huge here. George R. R. Martin is all for the if you've not picked up on it, the POV chapters, they normally are the name of the person, but when that person is taking on a character, the name that they've got there as the chapter title changes as well. So you get Mercy when Arya is taking on the role of Mercy, and so on. So Jon has been pretty consistently Jon. Are we going to see any more Jon chapters called Jon once he's gone away and come back? If we assume that yes, he's going to go away in Ghost and then come back as himself. I have heard some people theorize perhaps we're not going to have any more Jon chapters. I personally think that we probably will, if only because George R. R. Martin is he will need to show us what happens at the Wall, and the amount of POV characters at the Wall has hugely diminished to the point he suddenly had to introduce Melisandre to do a chapter, because she has to be our eyes and ears when Jon has gone. I think we will, I hope we will, because I think it would be epic, we'll have a Ghost chapter when Jon is in Ghost. But when he returns, will he still be called Jon in the chapter titles? I think it's incredibly possible that, yes, we will start getting these titles for the chapter that aren't necessarily just Jon. It's what they would be, who knows, maybe it might be the Lord of Winterfell or something along those lines, to show that he is taking on new and different roles and not just being Jon Snow, which is what he was being all the way through. Think that's it in terms of the questions from the chat. Questions from Samuel Lees. This links actually to what I was talking about Ghost a moment ago. Saying, Happy New Year to you, Robert, and here's to a much better 2021. Here, here. My question is regarding whether you think any of the remaining Stark direwolves survive the story. My likeliest guess is on Summer and or Ghost, but killing the direwolves off seems to be in line with George R. R. Martin's remorseless killing of his characters. So, yes, I think that there's a good chance a lot will die. I think Shaggy Dog will die. Grey Wind has already died, and Lady has already died. So that leaves us with just 3 left. Nymeria, who I think there's a very good chance will survive all of this. I can't see why. I mean, where Arya ends up at the end of all of this, I still think there's a chance that she... rather than getting in a boat and sailing off west, which I think is what happened on the show, that maybe she does walk into Nymeria. She has got an incredibly strong bond with Nymeria in the books that was not developed on the show, so there is the possibility of that, I think, in the books. But in any event, I think Nymeria probably will survive. Ghost, I think, also probably will survive. My feelings on that also linked into something. This was something Bookshelf Stud, who is an excellent contributor to Song of Ice and Fire World. He has this theory that I have now added it into my headcanon, which is based upon something that the writer of the graphic novel of Book 1, A Game of Thrones, said, which and I'm sure they thought this was like almost a throwaway line or throwaway question, but has got some quite far-reaching implications when you start to work through it. This person, he was asked, what input did George R. R. Martin have to you doing this graphic novel? And he basically talked a little bit around it, and he basically said there was just one thing that George R. R. Martin specifically asked him to add in, because it has an impact and it has a sort of a future echo or something along those lines connected with the last scene of the story. Now, that then means that you have to go through the graphic novel and try and figure out what has he added in. And the clue that we got was this was an otherwise insignificant moment, something that he had not thought that was important enough to include in the graphic novel until George R. R. Martin asked him to include it. So what was it? And Bookshelf does come up with this idea that the throwaway line is this bit, it's in the books, where you have Benjen and Jon right at the beginning when they're in Winterfell and Ghost is there. at this feast, and when King Robert's up, and Benjen just has this sort of throwaway line when he's talking about Ghost, and he sort of says, when we're out ranging beyond the wall, sometimes we hear the direwolves crying out, calling out. And that line and that bit of dialogue made its way into the graphic novel. It's got no specific... the graphic novel is quite focused because it's a huge book that has to be fit into a graphic novel, so it seems like quite an odd scene to include unless it was important. Now, why might that have some link to the last scene? Well, the last scene in the show was Jon Snow heading north and beyond the wall, and it would, I think, and this is based on what Bookshelf Stud has suggested, to have those direwolves calling out to him in the north, beyond the wall, works really well as a sort of a way just to end all of this. And perhaps even Ghost, who has been silent all the way through, answers their call, or something along those lines. So that, I think, is a hint that Ghost will survive. So as I say, I think Shaggy Dog will go. It will die. I think that Nymeria and Ghost will probably both survive. Summer, maybe not. I think there's a good chance that Summer could. I mean, I don't think there's a need for Summer to survive once Bran is back down south of the wall, plot-wise. Henry Fairbairn, hello Robert, Happy New Year, and to you. Could you lay out the exact plan between Varys and Illyrio to put a Targaryen on the throne? Was their plan all along to try and unite Dany with Aegon? It seems unlikely that Viserys was ever a part of the plan due to Varys and Illyrio's desire for a good king to sit on the throne. Also, do you think that Illyrio thought that Dany would somehow be able to hatch the dragon eggs he gave her, or were they just symbolic? And why not keep them for Aegon? Is this because Illyrio knew Aegon wasn't an official Targaryen, despite having Targor Blackfire blood? Okay, so the plan doesn't seem to have started until 5 years or so into Robert Baratheon's reign. Now, this means that Varys, obviously having served the Mad King, Aerys II, then is hoping probably that his successor, Robert Baratheon, will be a good king. But he's not. It becomes very apparent that he's not. And that seems to be when he comes up with this idea of how do you get this great, this proper ruler set on the throne. And that's when he hunts down John Connington, who at the time has risen up to second in command of the Golden Company. So we've got a chunk of time has gone by. Now, what was their plan? Their plan was to create Aegon, who does have Blackfire blood, probably through Illyrio's first wife, and then, yes, it is to marry Dany and Aegon. It does shift around a little bit. They do seem to be trying to move with the events, but the idea that Viserys would himself end up on the throne doesn't seem to have been much of a goer. I think, yes, they clearly at some stage they thought maybe Viserys could come across, but the idea of marrying Daenerys and Aegon, once Viserys was gone, that was then the plan that they were working to. Why give Dany the eggs? Well, I think that they are symbolic rather than anything else. They seem to have been collecting these symbols of Targaryen rulership. The dragon eggs are definitely one of them, and also the sword Blackfire, I think, will make an appearance at some point. So yes, that's the idea. They would then they came up with an agreement with the Golden Company earlier on that they would, on the back of, once they have got this dream team together, that they will come across back over and support them. So that is why the Golden Company, who were locked into this early on, were involved. So I don't think that he thought that the dragon eggs would hatch. I think that they were there just purely symbolic. Question. The place is Demon. My girlfriend only gets aroused if I dress as Syria Farrell and she Arya to stick me with the pointy end. Betrayal to his character. Yes. The Connor Walsh, thank you very much. Hey, Robert, could you wish myself and my wife a happy 1-year anniversary? Her name is Elish. She's reading in the room. It will give her a surprise. Happy birthday. I hope. Oh, no, happy birthday. Sorry, happy anniversary, I should say. I thought it was a birthday thing. I do apologize. I put my glasses on and everything. Elish or Elish and Connor, I hope you have had, a 1-year anniversary. What a year to have your first year of marriage. But congratulations, and I hope you have many more to come. And I hope it was a surprise. Think that's me caught up on the chat now. Rock out Michigan. Are Dany's eggs the ones Alyssa Farman stole? I believe so, yes. That's the clear implication of everything that we've seen. Well, I've done a video on it. You can have a look. But there were 3 dragon eggs. They made their way over into Essos. They made their way into Braavos. And I think we could ignore what Illyrio says about getting them from the Far East. I think that he got them from Braavos. Once they decided that they actually weren't going to hatch, they could then sell them. Sylvester Snow saying Happy New Year. How much of the story do you think Greyscale will affect in the last 2 books? It was given a cure on the TV show, but I don't think it will happen in the books. I think it will have a role, not huge, but I think the connecting bit here is actually going to be, first of all, John Connington has it, which is going to be quite significant. And I think that King's Landing may well get the Grey Plague, which is the sort of the cousin of Greyscale, which is faster moving and kills people. And we've already had mentions of this happens previously in port towns. In Pentos, it happened a while ago. It's happened in Old Town back when Pycelle was a young man. And we hear it has struck Yee, which is a long way away, but it's a hint that it's still out there somehow. So if King's Landing gets the plague, and this is, I don't think there's huge amounts that we can point our finger and say this is definitely going to happen because of X, Y, and Z. But the plague is definitely a thing that George R. Martin has been teasing a lot of the way through this. And so we have to ask, where is this going to happen? He has created this Grey Plague. So surely it's going to have to play a role at some point. You don't just create it and not use it. So the King's Landing is the obvious place for this to happen, and there is a historical precedent that I think that George R. R. Martin, because King's Landing is sort of like London. Back in the 1660s, there was the plague, and then the next year was the Great Fire of London. Now, I think it fits for me perfectly this idea that you have this plague, given the fact we've got John Connington coming in with Greyscale. You have this plague, and then the way that it gets ended is burning with fire. That adds a different twist to this idea of King's Landing burning. Actually, yes, it's going to be horrific, but it might also end the plague. So that's where I see it probably fitting in at the moment. Kelly Johnson, thoughts on Matt Smith as Daemon? This is one of the 4 people who've been cast so far in House of the Dragon. Matt Smith, I'm sure most people know from Doctor Who, also The Crown. I think he's a very talented actor. I think that he brings a kind of manic energy to a lot of his roles that definitely is needed for Daemon Targaryen. So yes, I'm feeling quite positive about it. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think one thing that Aziz from History of Westeros always says when these kind of things come up is that if you look back at Game of Thrones, their casting choices were brilliant, almost always spot on. Now, we therefore, I think, we can cut them some slack. We can say, okay, we're going to trust you on this one. So I think that he's got all the potential to be excellent. I think obviously we need to see what he looks like and how he does it, but I see no reason why he won't be excellent myself. Andrew K. Matt Smith as Daemon definitely growing on me as of late. Yeah, I think so. It's and Robin Blackwood saying going to be weird seeing him with light hair. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be strange, but I the idea, the more I think about it, he's got the angular features already, which works quite well. So yeah, I'm feeling hopeful. At what point in Viserys the First's reign, this is connected to this, do you think House of the Dragon is going to start? How much backstory is going to be explained through dialogue, and how much are we going to see? So I think what we had one of the other Viserys the First, Paddy Considine, who I think is definitely an excellent bit of casting. He's got, if you've never seen him in something, then he's a brilliant actor, and he has this kind of strong vulnerability to a lot of the way that he plays characters that I think is absolutely perfect for Viserys the First. And when are we going to? When's the action going to start? Well, I think that it has to start near the end of his life. I don't think we're going to have a long build up to it, but I hope that we're going to get a few episodes of the building tensions that simmer over into the Dance of the Dragons. I think we will. I don't think they're going to just drop us straight into here's lots of Targaryens fighting each other with no context. I think that the reason why we've got an actor, the first named actor for this, as Viserys the First, is that we're going to have a few episodes of this build-up. We're going to see how these different characters are interacting, and the tensions are being built up, so that when we get the death of Viserys the First, which is the thing which sort of sparks all of this, and then the High Towers suddenly launch their coup attempt, so to speak, then that has to have a build up to it. Now, they may even go all the way up to the end of season 1, just doing that build up. I would be very happy if they do. I think that would be excellent court intrigue before we get into battles and all the rest of it. So my best guess, the last few years of his life, but they will probably sort of contract it down to sort of show just, for example, the feast when they're wearing the different colors and things like that. I think they will want to show that. And that has to be, they have to have at least a couple of episodes, I think. Julia Erickson, hi Robert. If Lemon Cloak really is Richard Lonmouth, which is a theory that Lady Gwyn from Radio Westeros has, that I think is an excellent theory, he must certainly know things about Rhaegar and Lyanna. Do you think he could reveal Jon's true identity to Lady Stoneheart, or at least reveal who the Knight of the Laughing Tree was? Okay, so Richard Lonmouth was one of Rhaegar's squires. He was one of his closest allies. He was there at the tourney at Harrenhal. He probably was one of those who was with Rhaegar when he went to pick up Lyanna. We're told that Rhaegar set off with his closest companions. Now, that's Arthur Dayne and Oswald Went, but who else? The other close companions we know are people like Richard Lonmouth, Miles Newton, and others. There is a small group of close companions, and he is one of them. So Could he reveal Jon's true identity? I think that he won't know that bit of the story. So his involvement will have been with Rhaegar up to the point where Rhaegar and Lyanna get together. But he wasn't, it would appear, at the Tower of Joy. So he will not know what decisions were made by Ned and what Lyanna asked Ned to promise and what Howland was about. That's nothing that he knows about. But he will know the bit of the story about the leading up to Rhaegar and Lyanna getting together. That's the bit that he will know. The interesting thing is that if he is Richard Lonmouth, so far he's not really been with anyone who knows who he is, who can actually look at him and go, I'm sure I recognize you. But Jaime is now heading to the camp of the Brotherhood Without Banners. Jaime will know who Richard Lonmouth is, and so he may well be able to out him. So that is possible. But he's not going to be the person who reveals Jon's identity. Eric Fogg, a couple of linked questions about Biter, saying, who is Biter? Nimble Dick's hilarious stories look a lot different if Biter is one of the monsters Dick references come to life. And also, what is the relationship between Rogue, Biter, and Jaqen? So for those who don't remember, right at the beginning when we get Jaqen H'ghar, who's in the black cells, he has two companions with him, Rogue and Biter. Now, Biter doesn't say much, but he's got sharp teeth, big guy. And Rogue is the more talky one. Now, we're given a bit of background to them, that apparently Rogue discovered Biter as in King's Landing as an orphan, a stray, something along those lines, and then trained him up to be fighting in the fighting pits of King's Landing, which is not the same as the fighting pits of Meereen, say, but they had sort of street fighting going on. Now, so those two were together. They were then in the black cells. What for? Well, we can probably speculate. Bad things. They do not seem to be good people. Jaqen H'ghar joins them in the cell. They appear to be scared of him, which, given the background of those two, tells us quite a lot about Jaqen. So what's the relationship between them? Well, I'm aware that some people have drawn out very long and complicated things suggesting that they are also faceless men and all the rest of it. I think that the most Occam's razory answer to this is that they're not. But Jaqen has shown them his prowess, and that has meant that they wanted to stay on the same side as him. And so when he asks them to do stuff, they do it because they are scared of him. So that seems to be the relationship that they have got going on there. Who is Biter originally? Well, could he be one of Nimble Dick's stories? For those who don't know, he didn't make it to the show, which is a shame because he's a fun character. He is this guy who leads Brienne all the way through Cracklaw Point, which is that kind of like bit of the coastline just above King's Landing, and he leads her on it was a wild goose chase in the end, but he was reasonably honourable about it, and told her the truth pretty much. And he, as they go on this journey, he tells her loads of stories. He seems very proud of his homeland, the Cracklaw Point and House Crab and all the rest of it. And he has these great stories about the history of this once great land. But he dies in the end, unfortunately, and it's a dead end for Brienne. It's like much of her story of roaming around the Riverlands, lots of dead ends and not finding much. But could Biter be one of his stories? He could. Personally, I tend to the view that I actually quite like there to be some characters within this world who are just who they seem to be. They're just lowlifes in the world. I can remember when there were lots of theories about who Bronn might secretly be, and I always held to the view that I actually just want Bronn to be who he seems to be, a sellsword with a quick wit and good at fighting, and that's it. Because the moment that you make everyone in this story secretly somebody else, it actually, for me, makes the story a lot smaller. I think I want personally Biter just to be what we think he is, a foundling who was trained to be a merciless killer, and therefore that is what he is when he's sort of let loose in the world. Question from Hannah Boyd, not a question actually, just a super sticker. Thank you so much. And Nicola Trickler saying, so tell me, is this the year we get the Winds of Winter, in your opinion? Also, can you share your plans for your channels in 2021? I'll happily tell you about my plans for my channels in just one moment. In terms of the Winds of Winter, I've given up on guessing when The Winds of Winter is coming out. All I'm sticking to now is the longer that George R. R. Martin is writing it, and he is writing it, the bigger the book's getting, and the better the book is getting, because he's going back and updating things and changing stuff. That's one of the things that the most recent things that he's been telling us, is that some of the pre-release chapters, or at least one of them, he's gone back and amended. So we shouldn't take them as being set in stone in any way. But might it come out this year? Well, I think there's a better chance than last year, and there was a better chance last year than the year before. He has now had pretty much a whole year of solid writing on this. And he has been writing, from what he says, at a reasonable pace, not the same pace he used to write at, but maybe a chapter a week, or even more sometimes. I think he'd already got quite a long way in before this. I think we're nearly there. He said 6 months ago that there was still a long way to go. I don't know. I think there are a very, very small handful of people in this world who actually know the truth of it, where he's up to. I tragically am not one of those, and I can speculate as well as anyone else can, but I am personally happy just to let him take the time that he needs to produce it. As long as it comes, I'm very happy with that. In terms of plans for this channel next year, I've already talked about the things I'm going to be covering. I've got a few plans for my second channel, which is The Well Told Tale, which is my audio narration channel. I'm looking to, which I audio narrate fantasy and science fiction stories. If you're interested in audiobooks, that's something you might want to check out. That's available as a podcast as well as a YouTube channel. At the moment, I'm doing classics, some of the absolute classics of the genre. What I'm looking this year to do is to expand that out to be also including some modern classics, science fiction and fantasy, some more recent stuff as well. I'm going to be doing next up Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, which is a lot more recent, but is a fantastic story. I highly recommend you check it out. So big plans for that coming up. I'm going to be looking to expand the ways that I deliver my content, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm also looking to do, as much as I can, a lot more sort of paying it forward, paying it back, being a good member of this community. One thing I'm keen to do this year in particular, as well as charity live streams and things like that, one thing I want to do is support smaller creators more. I will announce something on that in due course in the next month or so. But just a way, if you are a new creator of some kind in any of these areas that I cover, Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings, anything like that, and you just you won the opportunity to just chat with or get answers from people who have gone through this journey of becoming a creator, then I'm hoping to be able to help people with that. So those are my big plans in terms of stuff coming up to keep an eye out for. As I say, if you're interested in what the Silmarils are, that video is coming out. Also, did the Maesters kill the dragons? Is my next video that I'm working on at the moment. Question from Freddie Hyde saying, what fate does Stannis intend for Theon? How might Theon escape? And how might Asha help? And how might this affect Stannis? Thank you for all you do. Stannis intends to kill Theon because he thinks that this is going to endear him to the Northern Lords, because everyone thinks that Theon killed Bran and Rickon. So that's what he's going to do, and he gets persuaded in the pre-release chapter that we've got, it would appear anyway, he gets persuaded to do this, or is about to be persuaded anyway, to do this by killing him before the Weirwood tree, which is nearby on an island in the middle of a frozen lake nearby. Great site for doing this. So while that may well happen, but while that is happening, we've got an army approaching Stannis, who he is also very aware of, which is, we say it's an army, it's actually technically two, because we have the Mandalese and we also have the Freys. Now, these have been sort of chucked out of Winterfell by the Boltons because they were at each other's throats and they were told to go off and attack Stannis. Now, the Mandalese hate the Freys, and so this isn't going to go the way that perhaps they might think. The Mandalese will definitely turn on the Freys. But also, the Mandalese know that Theon didn't kill Bran and Rickon, because they've already sent Davos off to get Rickon. So maybe we're going to get an intervention through the Weirwood tree from someone like Bran. Maybe we're going to get an intervention from the Mandalese. But in any event, Theon, I think, is going to be taken out to be killed. Then there's going to be a big battle. Then it's going to turn. Then he's going to be saved by the fact that actually the truth will out, that he didn't kill the people that he thought that he said he has. Brian Price, will the dead rise in the Winterfell crypts? If so, how might it impact the story? Yes, definitely. I've done a few videos on this. I am fully of the opinion that the whole point of the Winterfell crypts, and they're mentioned again and again and again and again, George R. R. Martin isn't just going to ignore them. The whole point of the Winterfell crypts is that this is successive generations of Starks all the way back. There is an army down there. They will be raised and they will come and fight against the others. That is what I think the whole point of this is. Whenever we go down there, the statues are anthropomorphized. We get told that people feel that they're being looked at, they're being judged, that all the time, every single time. In fact, the first time when we go down there with Ned and Robert, I think it's 8 or 9 times in the space of a few pages that the language used for the statues is of them being alive, of Ned feeling them judging him, of their eyes on him, of the appearing to move in the light. The language again and again and again is there. Robert reaches out to touch Lyanna as if he could bring her to life. The language again and again is about them being alive. This is not just flowery magic from George R. R. Martin. He is laying it thick. The that Stark Dead will come back. I personally think the statues will come to life. I think that is where this is going. And how will it impact on the story? I think that they were going to be there to be defending Winterfell. Sylvia Galasso, regarding the Valonqar prophecy, you think, and I agree, that Jaime is the best candidate to kill Cersei in the end, but if the Valonqar shall wrap his hands around her pale white throat, how is Jaime supposed to do that with just one hand? I know we should not read into these kind of things literally, but I was just curious of what you thought about it. Thank you. Yeah, I don't read this too literally, but if you were trying to just do a literal thing, and quite a few people have this challenge, it can't be Jaime because he can't wrap his hands. I think actually he could, if we want to go very literal. If you've got one hand you can't move that is like that, and then you've got another hand you can wrap your hands around like that. I think it's entirely possible. So I don't think this is a strong enough argument for me for saying it's not Jaime, is what I'm trying to say. I could certainly understand that it's a hint that it might be someone else, but it's certainly not an argument that says it's definitely not him. Eric Fogg, what has reviving Beric over and over done to Thoros' life force? Is he spent or drained, not just emotionally from the Brotherhood moving from Robin Hood to vengeance? So I think he is a bit spent and drained, but from the Brotherhood moving, as you say, from Robin Hood, this is what they were to start with, this band of merry men who were going off doing good, and where they are now is Lady Stoneheart's vehicle of vengeance. So I think he has been affected by that. But bringing back Beric, it didn't seem to be a matter of him pouring his own life force in. So what Beric did to bring Lady Stoneheart was to almost transfer his own life force into her. That doesn't seem to be what happened with Thoros. Certainly the first time, and I've said it many, many times, this is the most uniquely outliery bit of magic in the entire story, as far as I'm concerned, that first bringing back of Beric by Thoros, because there was no intentionality, there's no immediate sacrifice, there's lots of things that just don't seem to fit in with the way that magic works almost everywhere else. But in any event, this doesn't seem to be a matter of Thoros giving his own life in order to support Beric or bring Beric back. That's not the way this seems to be working. But he is, as you say, emotionally drained from the journey that he has been going through. I don't think it's magically drained. I think it's emotionally drained. Lady Pushkin saying, hi Robert, happy new year, love and blessings to you and all. Would you mind talking a little bit about George R. R. Martin's use of colour and numbers, please? Also, thank you for your hard work. It really means so much and is a place to lose yourself for a short time. That's one of the things I aim for with this channel, is a chance to just not think about the world for a little bit, just talk about things that we enjoy, and hopefully be uplifting through it. So in terms of use of colours and numbers, I did a live stream, I think it was quite a long time ago, with the wonderful Sarah O'Connor, who's an excellent artist, who does have an incredible controlled use of colour in the way that she uses her art. So if you're interested in more erudite and deep thoughts than what I'm about to say, then please do go and try and check that out. And please also, Bohemian Geek Studies is that's her current project. If you're interested, please do go and check her out. She is excellent, and her co-host as well. in terms of color, George R. R. Martin does use color on a couple of different levels. He uses it, and this is where the kind of the symbolism comes in. And I've had lots of people like Ron Steris come on and talk about this in quite a lot of depth. He does use it to symbolically show different character types. Now, for example, you get the others connected with blues and whites, but then you also have lots of other characters who have these kind of attributes that are also connected in with the colors. And so these are things that George R. R. Martin is trying to show us through that. Similarly, we have the black as being the sort of the opposite. And so we have lots of bits of combat that seem to have these two different character stereotypes. Not stereotypes is probably the wrong way of putting it, but character types facing each other, which are associated with color types. Now, that's one level that he uses it, but he also uses it to try and remind us of things and can make connections between things. And the classic example of this, I think, with color is the coloring of Bloodraven. Pale white skin, red eye. Now, what does that remind us of? Well, that reminds us of weirwood trees, white, red eyes. That also, clearly there's a link there between the two of them. That also reminds us, incidentally, of Ghost, white fur, red eyes. That's not a coincidence. George R. R. Martin is wanting us to make a link between these three things. Also, the Woods Witch, who becomes the Ghost of High Heart. She has got white skin and features and red eyes. Again, George R. R. Martin is wanting us to connect the dots between these different characters and to go, okay, maybe they're all, if not on the same side, they're connected in some way. So those are the ways that he uses colors. In terms of numbers, it's not something I've studied hugely with this, but it's very noticeable. He does use the kind of numbers that are important in sort of literary storytelling across the world. 3 and 7 and 12, these kind of numbers that are significant for us. We get the 3 heads of the dragon. We often get 3 siblings. There's clearly a link that he's making across between the 3 characters of Jon and Daenerys and Tyrion. Very, very similar. The more you dig into that triangle, the stronger the links between the 3 of them come. 7 is also important. The Tower of Joy, we had 7 against 3. He uses these numbers because they resonate with us. And I haven't done the further study of any more numbers, but it's very clear that he has got an understanding of the feel of numbers. So which Lord Commander of the Night's Watch became the Night's King? The 13th. Why is that important? Because 13 is it's a bad number. We have bad associations with it. Unlucky 13, Friday the 13th, 13 people, the Last Supper, that kind of thing. 13 is a bad number, and so it's not a coincidence that he uses 13 as the 13th Lord Commander. He has a clear and strong understanding of the use of numbers. What I haven't done, and I'd be fascinated if anyone has done this, is to see whether he's linked to this through in a slightly more in-depth level. Lol Twins, thank you for the super chat. I heard you once say there are stories in faraway lands about the War for the Dawn. Do you think they'll be attacked like Westeros will be? Yeah, there are stories all the way across Essos about the last long night, because this was a planet-wide thing. This wasn't just about Westeros. Will they get attacked like Westeros? This is a great unknown, to be honest. the focus of the story, and I think the way this is going to work is that the focus of the story is going to be Westeros. We have got, at the moment, we've got lots of characters over in Essos, but they are going to come together and go to Westeros. We'll get Arya making her way across from Braavos, and then Dany and Tyrion and all of the rest of that lot will all come together. They'll head off over to Westeros. We've already got Fagon and his lot of people headed over to Westeros. So the focus of all of our attention will be on Westeros. And I think the way that this is going to play is the same way that the stories that we hear about are from across Essos. We will hear stories of what has happened in Essos, rumors, people telling us what has happened, but we're never going to actually see it. So maybe we will hear some sailor saying the others have appeared at the Five Forks or something like that, but we won't see this. This is just something that we hear about, perhaps. And we won't know, fundamentally, we won't know if that's true. It's just rumor. Robin Blackwood saying, as an owner of a husky, I think a ghost POV chapter will involve a lot of sleeping, whining, and eating. It probably would, but my hope for the ghost chapter, if we get a ghost chapter, is that this is going to be Ghost hunting down, Jon in Ghost, hunting down the people who killed him in the Night Fort. I think that would be amazing. Andrew Kay saying, I noticed lately flipping around in the Song of Ice and Fire books, the sky colours seem to be telling and rather ominous at times, subtle but effective. Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that is there. Dany, if you think so, red, the sky being the colour of a blood bruise is a phrase which is used, I think, 3 times, perhaps once for Dany when the dragons first appear, once when Tyrion looks out over where old Valyria was, and once right at the end when Dany has been going she's in the Dothraki Sea and she's had this mind shift that she's going to be more Targaryen and fire and blood, and then she looks out westwards and the sky is the color of blood bruise, and that's the kind of thing that is used, or George R. R. Martin uses to a specific effect to try and make us link dragons, Targaryens, fire and blood bruise. Okay, I think that's me caught up on the chat. Question from Shar. Hi, Robert. What are the chances we'll get both the Winds of Winter and She-Wolves of Winterfell before the end of the decade? And how much does that chance drop if you include Dream of Spring? I'm not going to, as I say, I'm not going to guess when we're going to get these things, but before the end of the decade, the Winds of Winter and She-Wolves of Winterfell. One thing I will say is that he's made a start on the She-Wolves of Winterfell, apparently. So given the fact that that is just going to be a novella, I think that will follow relatively hot on the heels of the Winds of Winter when we get that. And by that, I mean perhaps within a year or so. So I think that we would expect those things to happen relatively swiftly. A Dream of Spring, I'm not even going to speculate. It's depending on where the story is at the end of the Winds of Winter. We could have a huge amount of story still left to tell in A Dream of Spring, which will mean, and he's not started writing it. Various people have speculated that he has. He might drop them both at the same time. He's not started writing that. He's doing the penultimate book, and then he's going to write the final book. So that will take some time. Mara Lee saying, compare and contrast. Could you please compare and contrast the Song of Ice and Fire book series with the Lord of the Rings? And you gave me a few different possibilities. I'm going to pick back dragons, which I think might be quite an interesting one. Just so George R. R. Martin does obviously I would say borrow a lot, but he's a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings. Dragons, they are the same kind of feel in both Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire, in that they are absolutely game changers. If there's a dragon there, that changes everything. That is the feel that George R. R. Martin is wanting, that dragons aren't just like little pets or things not to be taken seriously. They have to be taken very, very seriously. So the feel is the same for both of them. The difference, obviously, or there's a couple of differences, is that in the World of Ice and Fire, you can somehow, although dragons are definitely independent, there is this link, this bond across with the Valyrians, and this hint that you can control them with some kind of magical means as well, with the Hellhorn kind of idea. So that's definitely there. That is not a thing which we've got in Tolkien's world. Dragons are completely above and beyond all of that kind of thing. Also, they are fundamental. They were probably, it's never made completely clear, but they were made by Morgoth, the big baddie, and so they are fundamentally evil dragons in Lord of the Rings, whereas George R. R. Martin paints dragons as being almost morally neutral. They are just what they are. They burn things, they eat things, because that's what dragons do. So that's where the sort of the difference comes between the two. You also asked about power and items, things that symbolize power, like the One Ring and the Iron Throne. Lots of people have shown the connections there. There are any other things that symbolize power, like the swords. Yes, we have Blackfire and Dawn, which are swords in A Song of Ice and Fire, and we have various things that are passed down as symbols of kingship in Lord of the Rings world, the world of Middle-earth. The most obvious, obviously, is Narsil, the sword that was broken, which is this symbol of the kingship descending down from the Numenoreans, down from Isildur and Elendil before him. So that, when Aragorn has it, is a symbol that he is the rightful king. But there's also things like the Arkenstone, which for Durin's folk was a sort of a symbol of kingship as well. So that's something which is sort of passed down. And Tolkien does make a lot with the One Ring, but also things like the Arkenstone and the Silmarils, items that people lust after for power. That he makes a huge amount of play over this, that this is reflected in the Iron Throne, that fundamentally you stop and look, the things people do in order to claim this is horrendous, and it's the same for things with the One Ring, the Silmarils, and so on. There's so much death and destruction surrounding these things that may themselves be beautiful, but the corruption by the desire for power is huge. Redweld saying, this is another crossover question, would Sauron with the ring be able to dominate Westeros? Nerd question. Yes, I think is the short answer, because the thing which was preventing Sauron from dominating Middle-earth all those times was the strength that there was against him with the elves and all the rest of it. And when it was just humans, when it was just men, that he could and probably should have won. And that's where we're at. The biggest thing against him would be the things that he was not, the things that he would overlook, the small, the humble, probably the Samwell Tarleys of this world, let's say. Jamie McKenna saying, hola, happy new year, Sir Robert and Dan. Thank you, and to you too. Thank you for keeping us entertained. Cheers from Long Beach. Oh wow, it sounds like a lovely place to be. Cheers to you. Question from AK Channel TV. Thank you. Saying, what do Joff and Tommen use the lion sigil? Why do they use the lion sigil instead of the stag? They are legally Baratheon. Yes, they are, but they are very much brought up within the Lannister world, and the Baratheon kingship. Everybody knew that. Yes, technically, this was the Baratheon. Robert Baratheon was the king, who was the real power. He didn't care about actually ruling when he was there. Who were the real powers? It was the Lannisters. So that's what's going on there. And Joffrey did sometimes use the stag, but he was very aware of the Lannister side of his dual heritage, it has to be said. Oh, Costume CEO is in the chat. For those who do not know, Heidi. Hi, Heidi. Happy New Year to you. Excellent YouTube channel. I think you reached quite a big milestone recently as well with your subscriber numbers. And if you're interested in costumes and across the piece of all kinds of TV shows and the like, Heidi is an absolute expert on it. I go to her whenever I have a question about costumes, not just how they're made, but what they symbolize, how accurate they are, all those kinds of things. Please do go check out Costume CO. Morally, just rounding off, you were also asking about people who similar ways, but similar approaches between different people in Westeros and Middle Earth. You picked out Samwise Gamgee and Samwell Tarly. Yes, they definitely are very similar. I think that that's the classic example. But the other thing, something that I come back to quite a lot, is Jon Snow is being written like he's Aragorn, but in reality he's like Frodo. So that is the thing that George R. Martin is trying to trick us into thinking, that Jon is this great conquering hero king who's going to come into all his power, but actually what he is this world-weary person who's going to do the job, who's going to get it done, but he's not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of his victory afterwards. Duncan Idaho, what's the implication of Sansa's direwolf being killed off so early? In the books, so far, all the other living Starks still have their direwolves. So Grey Winter's obviously died along with Robb, but as you said, the other living Starks still have their direwolves. I was looking at that when I've said I'm doing this reread my way through Game of Thrones, and I've literally just been reading that chapter, or re-listening to it. If you're interested in my thoughts, it'll be on Twitter soon. But the point there was to show, and that actually, that section with what happens with Arya and Sansa and Cersei demanding that she has to have a direwolf killed, and then Robert sort of shrugging his shoulders, and then Ned doing it. That is, so far, that's my favorite section of the story, because it captures everyone's character so perfectly. It shows us, it reveals motivations, and it gives us hints about what's to come. So we get Sansa, who is desperately trying to fit in with the Lannisters, and yet this is not going to work out well for her. We get Robert Baratheon, who is willing to just shrug his shoulders for an easy time with the Lannisters. Cersei, who is cruel. Ned, who is insistent on things having to be done not just in the right way, but in as loving way as possible. He has to do it himself. All of these different characters, and it's set up like a classic tragedy, that once you get the situation it's pretty inevitable once you know everyone's character how it's going to end, and it's not going to end well. So the reason why it happened that early was it showed in a microcosm what was going to happen with that story. We talk about foreshadowing so much with what happened with the direwolf pups, but here, I mean, this is exactly what we see play out through the rest of the story. We see Arya running off from being herself and being this fighting with swords. We see Ned being honourable but losing out to the Lannisters. We get Cersei demanding the death of a direwolf. We get all of these things going on, and that it's all played out in one scene. As I say, it's a really, really good bit of writing, and that's why Sansa's why Lady died early on, and it meant for her as a plot device for her character development. It meant that she was not going to be like the rest of the Starks. She was not going to have that link across, which was necessary for her character development all the way through the King's Landing period. Sylvester Snow, will Salladhor Saan show up again in the story? Possibly. So we last see him heading off with his boats south to the Stepstones, where he calls himself the Prince of the Stepstones. Basically moaning and grumbling. He sets Davos ashore. But basically, he's moaning and grumbling about the fact he's not been paid, which is probably fair because he'd been promised lots of things by Stannis and wasn't paid for all of his services. Will we see him again? Well, assuming he does go to the Stepstones, we've at some point in the Winds of Winter, a huge navy is going to be sweeping through the Stepstones. We've already got Aurane Waters, who's potentially already there. We've got Salladhor Saan, who's potentially going to be there. Dany is going to be heading through. What's Salladhor Saan going to do then? He could just get his head down and try to ignore it all, or he could join forces with her and try and get his money that way. Stannis complains that Salladhor Saan is just wanting the money that he imagines is there underneath the Red Keep. So maybe he will just throw in his lot with her. I think he will reappear again. He's not going to be a major character, but he will appear again. Also asking what role Braavos and the Iron Bank will have. Is the Sea Lord really trying to bring back Targaryen rule? So in Braavos, it's not a stable political situation. We don't see a POV chapter from somebody who's involved in all of this, but just from seeing around the edges of it through Arya and the like, it's pretty obvious that something's going to change. The Sea Lord can change, and that can symbolize a huge shift. There are hints that this is what happened with Dany and Viserys, was that they were being sheltered by the Sea Lord, but then there was a huge shift. The Sea Lord changed, and they were then out on their ear, no longer being protected. This, incidentally, is how you get people who can be a former First Sword of Braavos, who is the protector to the Sea Lord, looking for work out of Braavos. This is where we can get Syria Forel being in King's Landing from. So because the Sea Lord changes. Now, what does this matter? Well, Braavos has thus far been staying out of things, but if there's a change, suddenly they may get involved again. Now, we have not honestly been told enough information about the different potential Braavosi candidates for who might be the new Sea Lord. So it's still a little bit up in the air, but I think it's fair to say that Braavos has to play a role somewhere in all of this. Their navy and their ability to create a big navy at short notice is going to have a role somewhere along the way. And it's entirely possible that if Stannis does die, then they will have to then be looking for who is it that they're going to be backing afterwards for the Iron Throne. They may, at that point, as we saw on the show, want to throw their weight behind Cersei. If she seems to be taking control, maybe it'll be Dany. We don't know, but I think that the Iron Bank will shift its support, and it will be more proactive in using its naval power in order to be pushing its own political agenda. Jenny Bird, Happy New Year and welcome back. Thank you very much. What do you think happened to Rohanne Webber when she disappeared in 230 AC? Any chance she could be Old Nan, as some speculate? So Rohanne Webber is a character from Duncan Egg stories. She was in Dunk meets her. There's a little bit of a frisson there between them, and the story. She marries at the end of this story, but after that, then she marries again into the Lannister family, and she has 4 children, one of which is Tytos. So actually, the Lannister family that we know come down partly from Rohanne Webber. But we have this throwaway line in The World of Ice and Fire that says that she, after having her 4th child, shortly afterwards, she then disappeared in mysterious circumstances, I think was the line, and we hear no more. So what happened? Well, we don't know. George R. R. Martin hasn't told us anything. I think this is him teeing up something for a later Duncan Egg story, because they do have that connection with Dunk. She would be a little bit older by that point, so this is a few stories down the line. So I think we probably won't find out for quite a long time. But I think it's probably connected in with Dunk in some way. Might she be Old Nan? My best guess, based purely on the logic that I slightly earlier in the stream, the idea that what Bran saw was in one of his visions was this very tall knight kissing somebody who we think might be Old Nan. That happened presumably when Dunk was up there for the She-Wolves of Winter, which is happening a lot sooner than that, so it wasn't the timeline wouldn't quite work with that. So no, I don't think it is Old Nan, but it's possible. Mark Daniel just asking, do the dragon skulls in the Red Keep have any powers or direct influence on the characters, or are they just decorations? So the skulls were there under the Targaryens, and then they got moved down into the cellars effectively. We hear of 2 characters. I think this is something that struck me quite recently. We hear of 2 characters who wander around them. And I was talking earlier about the fact that Tyrion had in his first couple of chapters, there are lots of kind of dragony references. Tyrion goes down there and seems to find them beautiful. He can't get enough of them. He describes in very flowery language what it's like to go and find these dragon skulls and all the rest of it. But Arya, who goes down there and hides down there, she's scared of them. She hides inside one of them, but the language which is used is very much as if they are physically trying to attack her, and she's trying to escape from them. So They don't have any other than being obviously the bones of magical creatures. So they don't have any specific powers, but they do help us see a little bit about the characters through how the characters interact with them. Shah saying, hello, Robert, a second time reading through the World of Ice and Fire, stumbled over something that wants explaining. As far as I know, and that knowledge may be very Germany-centric, cities used to be differentiated from towns by the royally given right to a few privileges, such as holding a market and building a city wall. Nowadays, few things seem to differentiate those terms, but size. Now, the World of Ice and Fire acknowledges 5 true cities: King's Landing, Old Town, Lannisport, Gulltown, and White Harbour. Is there anything but size separating those from the likes of Maidenpool, Barrowton, etc.? Why are there so few cities in Westeros compared to Essos, and so on? Well, there's a lot of stuff there. In terms of your experiences, I don't know what in Germany. I'm very happy to take on board the knowledge of the difference between cities and towns there. In England, in my culture, historically, a hamlet was a place that had just houses. A village had a parish church. A town had a market, and a city had a cathedral. That was how you could tell the sort of the different levels of things. Cities have royal charters saying that they are cities, that still do. They're given out about once every decade or so, I think, at the moment. But that was the sort of the breakdown. In terms of Westeros, I think this is just numbers. It's just the size of the place. There are only 5 places that are large enough to realistically be called a city. There are a couple that sort of temporarily get called cities. For example, when at Harrenhal, when there was the Great Council, then it's described as being like a city. The encampment that appeared outside it, of all the great lords and all the rest of it arriving there. And when you get to Wintertown, up at Winterfell, full, then that's a lot more. So I think once was described as like a city. So you do get some places that from time to time do fill up, but no, just in terms of pure size, there are only those 5 places that could count as sort of cities. And it's just a matter of population. Essos has got a much bigger population, so some much bigger cities. Diego Godoy, hola, hola. If you could choose one character that doesn't or didn't have a POV to have it, who would you choose and why? Possibly somebody who we otherwise do not necessarily know what they're up to, and it'd be really good to get information about what their motivations are. So someone like Varys, I would love to get a POV from their perspective, or I mean, a guy can dream. Bloodraven would be perfect. Joe Magician is in the chat. Hi there, Matt. Great to see you there. Happy New Year to you. Saying, have you seen Hadrian's Wall or Stonehenge? I have. I've both. The Stonehenge, I went there just a couple of summers ago. It's pretty impressive. There are some other stone circles actually. Avebury, if you're ever around the sort of the southwest of England, I would personally highly recommend you go visit Avebury as well. There are some other fantastic stone circles. But Hadrian's Wall, yes, I have. I've walked along sections of it in my younger days as well. It's quite low these days. There's not much of it left, but you can, if you go to certainly some parts of it, you can see where the Roman forts were, and it's very easy to understand the feel of how that translated in George R.R. Martin's mind to having the wall with various forts at different points down it. So yeah, if you're if you ever across Matt, very happy to show you one or other of them. It'd be fantastic to go back. Diego Godoy says, Ashara and Howland equals Mira theory requires her to have gotten pregnant at the tourney at Harrenhal, ? Do we know if Mira is younger or older than Jon? We're told that she's about the same age. It does not require her to have got pregnant at the tourney at Harrenhal. That would actually make her a bit older, noticeably older. In order to be about the same age as Jon, then you'd have to be get pregnant a bit later than that. So, for example, Kat became pregnant with Robb, and Robb was born again roughly around the same sort of time, but that was after they got married in Riverrun. Ned and Kat got married in Riverrun within the 2 weeks afterwards. So that's the sort of the timescale we're looking at. Harrenhal was a good year or so before that. And saying sometimes I listen to your videos while solving my 13 by 13 by 13 Rubik's Cube. I'd love to hear what people do when they're listening, solving a 13 by 13 by 13 Rubik's Cube. It sounds way beyond my comprehension, but that's very impressive, it has to say. Only the finest or cleverest people listening in here. Joe Magician saying, I always find it funny a small rundown wall in the north of England became a 700-foot ice wall. Quite the exaggerator, that, George. Yeah, well, it's his imagination going wild, and the feel of it is the important thing here, is that, but this is how it started. If you actually go back, I know you're aware of this, Matt, but just for others who may not be, when the wall started, it was just a normal height wall. When they built it, it's just that it got built up and up and up with each successive generation of Night's Watch. They just added more height to it until it's reached this stupidly high 700-foot tall thing. So it started at sort of a normal height. But yeah, the feel of Hadrian's Wall when you're there and you're looking out, north, you have civilization behind you and then just the hills in front of you and you've no idea what's beyond. Delights of Scotland beyond, obviously. Michelle saying, why do you think Arya never added Theon to her list? From what I remember, she found out about his betrayal to Robb while in Harrenhal. Any idea why she wouldn't have added him to her list for all his crimes against her family, true or otherwise? So I think this is a really good bit of writing, actually, because this Arya's adding of people to her list is very immediate, and it's very much about things which she has seen or experienced herself, not stuff that has gone on somewhere else. So you get Lady Stoneheart, who seems to be she happily seeking vengeance against all manner of things all over the place. But Arya's list, yes, it's got things like Joffrey, or people like Joffrey on there, and Cersei, but a lot of people like Polliver, just very Raff the Sweetling. They're not huge characters in the world. They're just people who she has personally seen do things that she thinks they need to be killed for. So this is all about her, and we have to remember she is still a child at this point, and so she is just seeing things around her, and that is her experience, and that is where her list comes from, not from I heard that this person over there did that. It's very much in her own world of what is going on, and that is how she is coping, not by having these huge ideas about the bigger political picture, but actually just what is happening in her immediate vicinity. That is what she can control, and that is that characterization follows her all the way through. What is it that she can control? Things in her own little area. She doesn't go actively hunting down all of these people on her list. They get dealt with when they come into her little area, as we saw in the Mercy chapter, the pre-release chapters from the Winds of Winter. Mark Gracie saying, careful what you're saying, Robert. There are Scots in the audience. Scotland is a beautiful place. I love it. I wasn't being even slightly tongue-in-cheek when I say the beauty of Scotland, majesty of Scotland beyond. Scotland is a wonderful place. Question from... actually, I'm down to my last couple of questions now from my patrons. So now is a good chance to drop things into the chat. I'll try and pick up as many things as I can from the chat as... in just a moment. Lawn Duck 20 saying, hello Robert, do you know if maesters get a say in which house or lord they are assigned to? There are some houses such as the Boltons or the Greyjoys, wherever I was assigned to them I'd rather just take the black. Understandable. Also, did we ever find out what happened to Maester Aemon's body once Sam got to the Citadel? Well, on that last bit, so Maester Aemon's body was pickled effectively. They put it, I think it was in a barrel of wine. And when Sam, I know it seems like Sam was in the Citadel for a long time. He genuinely wasn't. He's been there for less than a day so far. He's gone in, he's got picked up, taken to Marwyn the Mage's group, and that's it. He hasn't yet sorted himself out down there, so Aemon's body is still there on the boat waiting to be disembarked. So that's what's going on with him. In terms of the maesters getting a say into which house, we haven't been invited into the detail of exactly how that works. The implication is that they get allocated across. The lords or ladies of the noble houses can influence things to a greater or lesser degree. So, for example, Maester Lewin ended up in Winterfell because he was the maester at Riverrun, and Cat brought him up with her to Winterfell. Now, that seems to imply that this wasn't just the Citadel said, okay, you, Lewin, now you're changing from here to here. This was what Cat wanted, and Ned was happy with that. So that seems to imply that there is a way that the lords can slightly influence this. Certainly in Fire and Blood and the like, we see that the king, in terms of the Grand Maester, has an influence over who that could be at the very least. But the Citadel does still have a role in, generally speaking, they send people out to various places. So it's, the theory is that the Citadel assign people, but the reality is it can be a lot more sort of a two-way discussion. Catherine First saying, hi Robert, Happy New Year, and to you. A Song of Ice and Fire seems to be about journeys, physical ones, religious ones, cognitive ones, redemptions, different forms of awakenings, so on and so forth. Do you think that the presence of journeys and their importance for the individual are the main points to the books? Also, which journeys do you think will matter most in the end? Yes, I agree. Journeys are very important, and this is one of the things which, with the TV show, they did, I think, well to start with, and then towards the later seasons, they cut out the travel element, which sounds very stupid to be a thing that one misses, but they loved doing the jump cut of Tyrion saying, I have a cunning plan, and then seeing next scene Tyrion appearing in a different place. The first few seasons, they would show long periods of Brienne and Jaime traveling across the land, or Sandor and Arya or whatever, and these are important parts of character development. But that's the physical traveling. The way that George R. R. Martin often seems to be doing this is that the physical traveling is also the physical representation of the inward journey, the characterization journey. Now, you get, for example, Sansa is going to have this, and a lot of these journeys are quite circular. Sansa starts at Winterfell, not wanting to be at Winterfell, then heads, and she presumably will go on roughly the same journey she did on the show, down to King's Landing, and her inward journey, among many other things, is her moving to this position of realizing actually she got it wrong. She didn't want to be at King's Landing. Her place is Winterfell, and that's where she wants to be, and then moving around eventually to physically going back to Winterfell, showing her inward journey to wanting to be at Winterfell, whereas she started out being there but not wanting to be there. Dany is similarly on a very long journey, which started out for her as birth on Dragonstone, and I think that we will see her arriving back at Dragonstone with her army and navy and dragons and all the rest of it. So there's lots of these kind of journeys on the outside that mirror what's going on the inside. Dany's likely next step is to go to Vaes Dothrak, and that is a mirror of what happened to start with, of her going to Vaes Dothrak. She's journeying, but although she's in similar, apparently different circumstances, both times apparently without particular power, she has changed as a person between her first journey there and her second journey there, and that is the juxtaposition of that first journey against the second journey is the juxtaposition of the character, not the actual journey. So that's what is going on there. I've talked many times about things like the broken men and life to death, and there are even set redemption arcs. But I think that what I'm finding fascinating is the way that the physicality of the movement of people often is a reflection of the movement of their character. Okay, those are my questions from my patrons. Let me just pick up on a few things in the chat. Barrel of Rum, Sasak says, I think that's a reference to what Maester Aemon, his body was kept in. Yes, I think you may well be right there. Duncan Idaho saying, what do you think with George R. R. Martin's historical fantasy inspirations with the Boltons? Vlad the Impaler springs to my mind. Yes. So I don't know if not really thought about this for particular inspiration. He doesn't. I mean, we often do look for where is the historical inspiration for various things, but it's George R. R. Martin doesn't just pick up things from history. In terms of the inspiration, what inspirations he might have had, Vlad the Impaler, yes, definitely. In terms of this, if they put up flayed men to sort of show their enemies this was the sort of the same, and scare them, this was the same kind of tactic that Vlad the Impaler would do. Similarly gruesome things to scare opponents by putting enemies on spikes. Now, in terms of the Red Wedding itself, there are quite a few. George R. Martin has talked about this at quite a lot of detail. There are definitely some Scottish history inspirations for that, which then, given that we think of it as being the phrase, but this was the great betrayal by the Boltons as much as anything else, and so you can probably see the inspiration for what happened there in that element of Scottish history. I'm told that there are some Scottish people in the chat, so perhaps they will be able to tell us which. I'm trying to think of which Scottish clan it is who were guilty of the murdering of people. Hopefully somebody, and there's always clever people in the chat who can remember these kinds of things. Let's have a quick flick through the chat just to see what else, if anyone else is. Alexandra Vladimir saying George R. R. Martin loves to shock his audience and has a lot of horror elements. He does indeed. Mike S. McFly, I'm a Patreon now. Welcome. And forgot to put my questions before the live stream. Get some questions for next week. Excellent. Yes, just I put it on normally on the morning, my morning of the day of the live stream, and it just reply to that message over on Patreon. Jackie Monclair, is Jon truly more legitimate as heir to the Iron Throne over Dany? Wasn't Elia Martell still Rhaegar's wife when he passed, so Jon would still technically be a bastard, wouldn't he? Well, so this, I went through this with the Westerosi Bar Association. Fantastic. If the podcast, if you're interested, they were on this channel. I recorded with them about law in Westeros, and this was one of the things that we talked our way through. And the short answer is there are so many variables to this as to who actually is theoretically next in line. Now, we don't know the detail of what happened. If Rhaegar and Lyanna weren't married and Jon was therefore bastard born, then yes, Dany would be ahead of him in the line of succession. However, if they did marry, then you could make a case that he's ahead of her, unless, as apparently Aerys did, he took Rhaegar out of the line of succession and said that Viserys was next in line. And if that's the case, then you would say that Dany potentially could come next. There are so many different variables going on here that we simply do not know the answer. But that is the point of this. George R. R. Martin does not want this to be a very simple, this is the clear heir. This is a good old-fashioned Targaryen succession crisis. The person who is the rightful ruler is whoever you think it is, and everybody will have a different view. And that is how we're going to get to that. Well, we're going to get to this point at some point in the Dream of Spring, where people are just coming behind the person that they want to be the ruler. And some people will think that it should be Jon. Some people will think it should be Dany. Some people will think it should be Aegon. Kai Johnson saying, did Ned Stark not trust his wife Catelyn to keep the secret that Jon wasn't his son? Also, would Jon Connington not notice if Aegon wasn't Rhaegar's biological son? So on Ned, no, he didn't trust Cat. He didn't know Cat. He'd not met her before he married her. He'd only known her for 2 weeks. This was a secret that we assume, swore to tell no one. So once he'd started out not telling her and then just refused to talk about the subject, then it just stayed one of those things you do not talk about. So that's the short answer there. Whether you think that's right or fair of Ned is... yeah, that's for you to decide. But the fact is that Ned did not trust Cat. He didn't know her that well. Would Jon Connington have noticed that Aegon wasn't Rhaegar's son? Not necessarily. I mean, he has the Valyrian looks, and he seems to be a lot of the things that Rhaegar was, as in very educated, quite booky, thinking a lot about different things. So he comes across as being somebody who could believably be Rhaegar's son, and I think that is enough. just quick, if you've got any more questions. I think that's probably effective rambling. Given that her assumptions were based on Peter, any chance that Marillion is still alive, and will this generation's mushroom as an established bard? Also, 200k subs Dan cameo question. I think no, Marillion's gone. I'm holding out hope for mushroom in the Dance of the Dragon spin-off, House of the Dragon. I'm loving that idea. 200k subs. I'm on about 190 at the moment, I think. Dan cameo at 200. I'm not sure on a live stream. He does like to take himself up to bed before this, bless him, which I don't really want. I don't think it's fair for me to disturb, but I will happily put a picture of him up on Instagram or someone like that at 200k, even when I make it. So thank you very much. Ivan Rodriguez, do you think Daenerys will blow the dragon horn? I think she's able to without dying because of her Valyrian blood. She may do. It's Crocken Tacos is here. Hi there, good to see you. We don't know all of the lore of how the dragon horn works. If what it says on the side is true, if we've been told it's true, no mortal man may blow me. I mean, Daenerys could do this as a woman on a technicality. Maybe it's because she's Valyrian. Yeah, it's possible. We don't know the answer to this, but I think it will be used. It's too much of a coincidence that she is thinking in her last chapter, she's thinking about, the Valyrians used to have magical horns that could control dragons. That would be really useful. And the fact that a magical horn that is there to be controlling dragons at that pretty much that moment is being shipped into Slavers Bay right then to Meereen. So it's too much of a coincidence for it not to be used, and not just by Victarion, but on behalf of her, if she does it or not herself. Okay, the Black Dinner, Robin Blackwood, thank you very much. That's what I was looking for in terms of the bit of Scottish history. The Black Dinner being the biggest inspiration for the Red Wedding, the 2 Douglas kids getting killed, and the people who organised it being given the victims' lands and titles. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. I knew that there would be cleverer people than I in the chat. Okay, guys, I think with that, I'm going to start to draw this one to a close. It's been fantastic getting back into the swing of things in the new year. I've got lots of new content coming over the course of the next few weeks. Please do keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, first of all, patrons, thank you very much. I'm going to try and be thinking of new ways over the course of this year to be giving something back to you as well. So if you're interested in either supporting this channel, getting access to some patron benefits like getting the questions prioritized here, also getting access to things like my readings of the pre-release chapters of The Winds of Winter, then there will be a link appearing somewhere about here in a moment. If you're interested in more videos like this, more of my live streams, there will be a link appearing somewhere around here in a moment. Okay, that's it. Happy New Year, everyone. Great to be back, and I shall see you again same time next week. Take care. Bye now.